Hi, I'm Trinity French, and I'm half of the coaching duo here at Wired to Change with the number 2. And today we have a very, very, very special guest, Dr. Holly Sullinger. Thank you for joining us today.
Hey, thank you for having me. I think it's going to be fun.
I am super excited. We definitely miss Mike today, but he is not here because of his grandson, Oliver. He is doing the grandpa thing, and we know how much he loves Oliver. So it is absolutely okay that we get to have a little girl time.
I think that's wonderful. And I think what Mike's doing is great. Family first.
Absolutely, 100%. So one of the first things that kind of wowed me when I met you is that we know some mutual people.
Yeah.
You walked into the podcast studio. We're here at the Purple Comma studio, and you knew Drago right off the bat.
Right off the bat.
So
love Drago.
Obviously, you know good people.
I do.
And you're well connected within the triangle. And then on top of that, Mike always provides me with notes for the shows.
Uh-oh.
And I know. And
wonder what those notes could contain.
He might have dug up a little dirt on you.
Cool.
And also a list of all of the leadership, professional development topics, and technology topics that you are an expert in. And it's a full page long. Which I was like,
I
okay,
paid him to say that.
We are going to have plenty to talk about today.
Absolutely.
So why don't you share with our listeners a little bit about you? Tell us, who are you?
Oh, that's a really good question. So I am somebody who gets really jazzed when I see the light bulb moments go on for others. My entire life, I tried to escape it. I had a mother who was a kindergarten teacher her entire life. I have a daughter who's a 4th grade teacher. I have great-grandparents who were pioneer teachers in the Midwest. So we have education disease in our blood. We just love to educate. We love it when we learn and when we help others learn.
That's amazing.
So my company is Dr. Holly Speaks, and my entire adult life I've done corporate speaking, training, and consulting, and a lot of facilitation. And I do 3 broad topic areas. You mentioned the page there. I do technology, leadership, and professional development. So... and it didn't start out that way. Obviously, it started out small, and then it became what it is now. And I love what I do. I love making people's lives easier and helping them stay relevant.
That's awesome. You know, you really said something that resonated with me, and I think is so important for our listeners to hear, which is it started small and then it grew into something. Because I think so many times people see where somebody's at in their career,
right,
and they think, wow, that person is so lucky, and they, you know, I want what they have, but they want it tomorrow, not realizing that there were a lot of steps that it took to get there, and it didn't just happen overnight.
Yeah, so there's a lot of experts out there say that it takes about 10,000 hours to get really good at anything.
Absolutely.
So that's not an overnight.
That is definitely not overnight. And what book is that? Maxwell.
Yes, it is.
Yes. Yeah, I'm familiar with the 10,000 hour theory. So love it. And so you don't look old enough to be on your way to your 10,000 hours. But by the list of things in front of me, it looks like that you have definitely built up a good reputation and repertoire of things that you are able to help people with.
And so going back to, like you said, the beginning, I never in a million years would have thought that I would have ended up with the career that I have. So, you know, we hear today, it's really big today to hear about people pivoting and being resilient and finding something else because so much was taken away from them. And even though life is rough, sometimes when we have to do something like that, we end up the better for it. So I went through life all the way halfway through college, terrified to speak in public.
Really?
Terrified. And I was a straight A student. I was very retentive about my grades, but I would skip every single time we were supposed to give a speech. I would skip because I knew there'd be a makeup day at the end and there'd be almost nobody there and I'd be safe, you know. And when I did get up to speak in front of people, I would stammer. I would talk way too fast. It was just ugly. I felt like I was going to be sick, you know. And about halfway through college, my dad overheard me. I didn't realize he was around. He heard me saying to my younger sister that I was going to skip the next day because it was a speech day. And my dad is the most pivotal person in my life, the most amazing father anybody could have ever had. And he whipped around the corner and said, absolutely not, no daughter of mine is going to be afraid of something like that.
Wow.
And I was like, too late. I already, too late, Dad, I already am, you know. And he said, in 2 days, he goes, I want you to be dressed and down at my car at 6:30 in the morning. And I was like, is he going to like dump me in the desert? You know what it's
right?
I'm like a worthless child. What's the deal?
Here's your rucksack and have fun.
and don't come out till you can speak, right? No, he didn't tell me where we were going, but I love my dad. I knew he never would have anything other than good things intended for me. He ended up taking me to his Toastmasters breakfast meeting. And he took me, now for those of you that don't know about Toastmasters, it has nothing to do with toast. It's an international group that helps you learn how to speak in public or just speak in general. And he made me go with him for 2 years. And when I say made me, it ended up being fun. I was like this little 19-year-old girl with all these middle-aged male executives, right?
Yeah.
And they all adopted me. But I learned to speak. And at the end of that 2 years, it was as if by magic, two of my college professors called up and they said, we want you to teach an evening class. You know a particular topic that nobody else around here knows, and we want you to teach it. And every ounce of my being still wanted to scream no, because I still had that kind of intimidation, the fear level. But I knew I had the skill at that point. So I forced myself to say yes. And so little by little, by forcing myself and facing up to it, it became a full career. And I remember distinctly the night that I was teaching, and I managed to look up and see that faces were interested and engaged, and they also looked compassionate at me because they could tell I was terrified.
Right.
And I thought, this is cool. They don't care about me. They want my message.
Right.
And once I could separate that out and say, I can give this to these people, then it made me feel empowered. And I seem to have flown with that.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
So I love that you say that, because I now, do a ton of public speaking.
Yeah.
And when I was younger, public speaking absolutely terrified me.
Yeah.
And it still does.
Yeah.
I'll get up, I do it, but on the inside, until the words are starting to come out of my mouth, I'm like, why in Hades am I actually doing this? Like, this is the most terrible idea ever. But when I was younger, I danced for, 16, 17 years before I started going into any public speaking. And the only time that I had ever gotten in front of people was either dancing or I loved drama. So I was always the lead in the class play. But when you're doing that, you don't have to have your own words.
Right.
You're in a character of somebody else. So pretending to be something different was so easy and natural to me. But when I had to get up and it had to be me up there and it's me that they're judging, there was so much more pressure behind that than, memorizing a script and acting it out, or memorizing a dance routine and putting it on in front of, hundreds of, if not thousands of people.
So how do you master your nerves when you have nerves? Because we all still have nerves from time to time. How do you master your nerves? I'm curious.
So people that have listened to our show know that my tagline and my mantra to myself is, it can't kill you. Like, it literally, and I'll be like, Trinity, suck it up, Buttercup. It can't kill you. Like, what is and then I'm like, what is the worst thing that's going to happen? You stutter a little, you lose your spot, you forget something. And I have always used humor to overcome that. So when I do speak in public, I found ways for it to be humorous and make people laugh, because as soon as I get that first little chuckle out of people, it's like, oh, okay. And then it feeds and then it grows. And then before you know, it's like, I'm a monster and I don't want to get off stage.
That's
because
the performer in you.
Yes. And then it's like, ooh, this feels good.
Yeah.
And then I get off the stage and I'm like, oh, I can't wait to do that again, until I say yes to doing it again. And then it repeats itself. Yeah.
I love it.
But definitely humor, and just knowing that at the end of the day, of all the things that I'm doing, one, most of the time I'm getting paid. So it's a job.
Yeah.
And, those of us that work and get paid, which most everybody does.
Enjoy that.
You enjoy getting paid for what we do. And when I was in college, my favorite class that I took actually wound up being my speech and debate class.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And I learned so much from my communications professor that taught speech and debate. He actually is the gentleman who taught all of the Miss Michigans and took them so he would help all the pageant girls
know what to say,
how to say it. And he lent a lot of that to what he taught us, and not just in how to put a good speech together, but also just how to deliver something and how to do it comfortably, and really just, even if you don't feel confident, how to fake that confidence.
That's awesome.
Yeah. What about you?
I actually, that's one of the methods that I use, but when I'm doing like a corporate speaking engagement, I'll give you an example. I was asked to speak for a large professional association. This has been many years ago now, but it was in the Marriott in Durham. Mm-hmm. And in the basement, they have that huge, I guess, conference room, I'm going to call it. And I didn't ask ahead of time, which I should have done, how many people will be in attendance. And I showed up, and I hugged the ladies that coordinated it. They were good friends. And I said, hey, can I go in and get set up? And they said, oh, no, you follow the other, you have the keynote. And that was news to me at the time. And I said, oh, okay. And they said, just peek in and you can see the room. And I opened up the door, and the entire place had been opened up. There were 1,200 people sitting in there. There were 2 big screens on either side, and the speaker that was up there at the time looked like a little ant up there in the middle. And I remember closing the door and taking a big, gulp because it was very intimidating. But as I walked in, and this is something that I tell all my potential speakers, when you walk into a place like that, when you have the time, you want to meet some people on the way. So as I walked up the aisle, I talked to people, how's it going? What have you learned here today? Are you having a great time? And they talk to you. By the time you get to the front, you feel like you're in a house full of friends. That's right. And then the other thing that I did prior to walking into the room is I used visualization. So visualization is something that my dad taught me from the time I was knee high, and I thought everybody knew how to do it. And I understand now it's like not a normal thing that everybody does. But it's basically being a performer in your mind. You basically run a little film strip in your mind of what you want to have happen. You visualize it happening, and you run it over and over and over again. And this is, believe it or not, this is what the professional athletes do when they're back before COVID, when they would travel, on planes or buses or whatever. They're not practicing. But if they visualize,
they're practicing in their brains.
That's right. And experts tell us that 70% as effective as actually doing it. So I visualized myself going to the front, being confident, getting started confidently, seeing smiles back, making good points, and that's actually what happened.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
I just realized that when I go in to do a speech or talk to people, I always make sure that I talk to people in the audience first.
Good.
And
so you're just intuitively doing it. That's great.
Well, because I like to call on people, get them interactive, point at them, eye contact, because you're right. If you feel like you know those people, now it takes away some of that fear. And I always felt like if they felt like they knew me, they're going to be more engaged.
That's very true.
Than if they didn't. So that's really, I'm just thinking like, okay, steps to having a great public speaking career. Number one, engage your audience. Number 2.
Yeah. And
what did you call it when you're pre-thinking?
Visualization, yeah. And literally, I think it was Michael Jordan who really made it popular, like amongst professional athletes, and they all use it now when they're not physically doing something. They're thinking about, okay, what if so-and-so blocks me over here? Well, I'm going to do this, or this, and this is what it would look like, and they run through it in their minds a couple times. And by the time it happens, they're ready. Yeah. They are ready for it.
I think the times when I'm doing that, if I have to like fire somebody or something hard that's coming up, I'll play out all the different scenarios in my head and what I would say back. And I guess that's a form of visualization. But I never thought, hey, take that and apply it to the other things that you're doing.
Yeah, anything that you find that you're tentative about doing, or you feel it's new and different, or it's not quite comfortable yet, if you just practice visualizing it, it makes it all the better. It's funny because I have never been able to do the drama thing. I have trouble getting lost in another character. But my daughter's like you. She loves being on stage. She's very outgoing. She's got that theater presence everywhere she goes, you know. And the few times that I've had to do something where I've had to kind of sort of simulate being an actor, actress, whatever, I've used it all over the place because it's just not my comfort zone.
Right.
So visualization works for anything.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
So what other advice do you have people? Because I think so many people have to speak at different points in their careers. You never know when that's going to come up, or when you're going to be put in front of a training class or be asked to present, or, even we were talking about a mutual friend we have, Carrie.
Yes.
And when she had asked me, I met her at a bar.
Nice.
Like totally random. She actually complimented my knee-high socks, which were fake. For those of you gentlemen out there that don't know, they make fake knee-high socks that actually just go around the top of your legs to make it look like you're wearing knee-high socks under my knee-high boots. And that's how we started talking.
I love it.
And I wound up finding out that she made jewelry, and we were talking that. And then we were talking UNC basketball because we were all there watching the game. And before you know it, we're exchanging contact information, and I'm scheduling a one-to-one with her. And we have our one-to-one. And during that, she asks if I would come speak at the Career Transitions Forum.
Beautiful.
And that was one of those moments where I was like, oh man. And of course I said yes, but at the same time I was like, why did I agree to do this? I don't know why. And it's going to be terrible. But then I kept telling myself, again, it's not going to kill you.
Yeah.
And it's going to be great. It'll be fun. Like, just have fun with it.
Yep.
Because if you're not having fun with it, people can tell.
Yeah.
And if I'm having fun with it, then the audience is going to be engaged and they're going to be having fun.
I agree.
And I think the best part about Toastmasters or taking a public speaking course or anything like that is to learn how to read your audience, because you can tell if they are breaking eye contact or they're not engaged, or you try to be funny and it lands flat. And you can play to your audience. And even if I had something completely scripted and ready to go, most of the time I'm going to wind up winging it based on their either interest, or if I can tell that they're super interested in a topic, like elaborating on that a little bit more than maybe something else.
Yep.
So what other tips do you have for people that are in a presenting mode?
So the biggest thing, and I kind of alluded to this, but the audience comes in with the whole idea behind them of what's in it for me. Mm-hmm. And so if you can remove yourself for just a moment and think of yourself just as a vehicle for the information delivery, and put yourself in the shoes of the audience. If I was in the audience, what would I be looking for? What are my passions? What are my interests? Why would I be sitting through this? That helps to kind of loosen you up a little bit. What are they looking for? For example, the people in Career Transitions Forum are without a job right now.
Right.
So they're not worried about, judging a speaker. They're like, please give me some morsel of knowledge that will help me in my career transition. And if you think of it that way, think of it from their perspective, it helps you form all of your everything that you were talking about, the fun that you have, the information that you give. And then I move around a lot. I know you and I are both sitting here doing a podcast, and we're both using our arms and our legs. And
and if we could do this podcast standing up, we probably would.
That's it. But yeah, so I move around a lot because if you think about it, when you're watching someone, if they move, they recapture your attention. So it helps you stay focused.
Yes.
As an audience member. And it helps me because I'm hyper and I like to move. So, Yeah, so there's a lot of things you could do. And then also, so many people use PowerPoints. And believe it or not, PowerPoints actually usually help the audience because they see you and then they have a visual kind of confirmation of what's being talked about. But so many people use it incorrectly. And so that's one of the biggest things that I teach is how to do a correct presentation, both from a presenter speaker's perspective and then also from a technology perspective.
Yeah, I'm probably the worst person to go see anyone public speak because I'm so critical.
Yep,
of
because
them.
you've done it. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh gosh, I can't believe it. And it drives me crazy when people put their entire presentation on a PowerPoint and read it.
Yep.
Because I'm like, I'm a fast reader.
Yep.
So I'm like, I'm done. I'm already done. Like
and why are you
you've lost
even up there?
my, right. Like you've lost my, I'm like, okay, I've already read it. Move on to the next one. Is there anything else that you can deliver? Are there any other tidbits that people should look out for and not put in their PowerPoint?
Oh yeah. Well, there's a whole new style of PowerPoint presentation called Pachakacha, or you'll hear some people call it Pechakucha. I know it sounds like I just sneezed in the microphone.
Yeah.
But it's an Asian word. It means chit chat. And two architects in Asia came up with this idea because they were so tired of PowerPoints. So it's 20 slides in your PowerPoint presentation, and you do each one for a total of 20 seconds. So the presentation itself is 6 minutes and 40 seconds. That's it. Mm-hmm. And it's all images. So you have to carry the message. And that's the job of the speaker. That's what people don't realize. The speaker's there to present the information.
Right.
PowerPoint is literally just supposed to be a visual backup that kind of cements what the speaker's talking about. Not the presentation, but like a reminder. Yeah.
Yes.
And then you also, and I have people go, well, I'm presenting a budget. I can't just put a picture of a budget. You know, you have handouts also. In a good presentation, you have handouts that people are going to get and walk away with. So if you need to give them a budget, you don't try, oh my gosh, have you ever seen anybody try to put a spreadsheet up on a PowerPoint? I mean, it just doesn't.
It's terrible.
It's horrible. So the speaker has the message, PowerPoint has the visual imagery for backup, and then you have a handout. And if you do those three things together, you have a great presentation.
That's fantastic advice.
Yeah.
Really good advice.
It really does work.
I wish everyone that needs to be out there presenting would listen to this, because I've had to sit through more bad presentations than I care to ever have to sit through again. And I know it's bad if I want to leave, and I know it's really bad if I do get up and leave.
And I've done the same.
I used to feel it's kind of like reading a bad book. I would be like, oh, I have to sit through this because it's so rude to leave. And then I was like, no, it's kind of like a signal of like, if people are leaving, that should be a signal to the speaker that something is not going well.
Exactly. And if you think about it, we have so many demands on our time. If something's not truly worth our time, then we need to turn our attention to something that is.
To something different. Yeah. Especially if you're at a conference or somewhere where there's multiple speakers.
Multiple options.
Right.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to leave and I'm going to go find another one and see if they're doing any better.
And sometimes I've accidentally fallen into like a new speaker speaking outside, and they're phenomenal.
Right. And so it's not even a topic that you thought you'd be interested in. And you're like, this is great.
Yeah. And maybe it isn't something you're interested in, but they're so engaging. You know?
Exactly. Yeah. There was a women's conference a couple years ago here in Raleigh, and I think that all those women could have utilized your advice, and it would have made the conference so much better, because they were not professional public speakers. Mm-hmm. They needed a little bit of guidance, and just a little bit of guidance, I think, would have created a much better overall experience of the conference.
So a friend of mine, Sarah Williams, she developed a program in this area. She's now moved back to Chicago, but it's called the ESTEAM program, and it's for young at-risk middle school girls. And it's to teach them to feel more positively about themselves. And it's a 12-week program, and at the end of the 12 weeks, they have to get up and give a presentation. And you want to talk about kids that want to turn inside out, because they have to give, So Sarah asked me to work with the girls and to help them feel more comfortable. And you would not believe how well those, just with a couple of key points and a couple of tips and practices, how well they did. And I imagine they'll probably take those skills and continue to refine them as they continue to grow.
That is priceless that you gave them that.
Yeah. It was awesome. It was so fun. They gave me so much too. They were such great girls.
So when you're not helping people become better public speakers or public speaking yourself, what other interests do you have?
I have a lot of interest. If you're talking about what else do I do from a work perspective, a big part of my work is technology. So I teach people how to do data analytics using Excel, using Power BI. That's a big demand on my time right now.
Okay.
There's so much data out there, and people want to be able to make use of it, make it pretty.
To mine it, yes.
To mine it, absolutely. So that's something that I do. And then a lot of leadership topics, but Holly, the person, I have a lot of interests as well. One of those right now, I have, people have always said, you've got to find something positive out of every negative situation. I truly believe that. Find the silver lining. And in this COVID-ness that we are in, my silver lining is that I don't have to travel. So all of the travel time that I used to spend, I've recouped, and it's now Holly time. And I have been able to bump up my exercising. I've been able to get outside. I've been able to pick up some hobbies that I hadn't done in quite some time. And so that's my silver lining. So in addition to working out, I'm doing things like painting, just little things that just make me happy.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And just a really good use of your time to reinvest in yourself versus, I know that with A-type leader type people, it's very easy to not say no and to wind up a little overcommitted.
Yep.
And then feel like you're failing at things because you've just taken on more than you can.
Yeah, let's see, 2 years ago, I went back out on my own. I've had my business my entire life, but I actually went to work and ran a division at North Carolina State University. For 10 years, I did that. And while I was doing that, I got my PhD. So I was running a unit, which was a bazillion hours a week, getting my PhD, which was a bazillion hours a week. And then I still had my clients that I was doing speeches for and trainings for, et cetera. And so at the end of that time, I was like, okay, I'm ready to be back out on my own. I'm ready to, and it's just amazing. I'm still a type A person. I still stay very busy, but I'm healthier. Mm-hmm. I think better. I mean, when you're working out too, your mind it's just like a mental boost for you as well.
Exactly. All those endorphins.
Yeah.
Or as my dear friend says, all those dolphins.
Dolphins. I think I like that one better.
All those dolphins swimming around. So what did you, because I'm a huge NC State fan.
Oh, Wolfpack, go Wolfpack.
Yes, go Pack, go Pack. And my husband, Scott, huge NC State fan.
Beautiful.
So what did you do at NC State?
So I ran the corporate training division. It was called Technology Training Solutions, which has now come to an end. And we knew it was going to, but it stopped. And so I went back out and now I'm doing Dr. Holly Speaks. But we basically did what I had done all my life. So we basically provided training experiences for corporations in our area.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. So we had, they would come, we had a dedicated classroom space they would come to, or we would go to their location.
Awesome. Who's the favorite one that you worked with?
My favorite client is probably a client I'm still working with, Blue Cross.
Blue Cross.
Yeah, they have Blue University over in Durham. They're really big believers in keeping their workforce trained and allowing them to have just tons of educational opportunities. So they're one of my favorites.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So as a small business owner, since this is all about small business, one of my favorite questions to ask is, what is one thing that you struggled with and were able to overcome?
Okay, yeah, that's easy. Selling myself. In the beginning, when, for example, I first moved to North Carolina, I got a job doing some corporate training through NC State. And the work just exploded on its own. I didn't have to say a word. I didn't have to sell myself. And I've always hated sales. I don't feel like I'm a good salesperson. And then finally, I was sitting down with a friend at one point. She said, but Holly, you're selling yourself every time you get up in front of a group. And I just had never thought of it that way before. So this time when I got back out on my own, it was a little bit different. People continued to think of me as being at NC State. It was hard for them to realize, oh no, she's on her own now. She has more time for us, right?
Right.
So I had to learn how to sell myself. I had to jump on the social media bandwagon. I had to figure out how I could reach out to people and connect with people on LinkedIn and make phone calls and all that stuff. And every time I got intimidated by it and said, oh, I hate it, I said, now stop. You do this when you're anytime you get in front of a room and you just do the very best thing you can, you're selling yourself. That's all you have to do. And it's become very easy for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And probably very good advice
make those connections.
I think that we're all in sales. So
we are.
And whether or not you have a sales title or not, you're always either selling yourself to your boss or selling your ideas to your peers or whatever it is. We're all somehow in a sales capacity.
Right.
And being able to have confidence in that and take it to that next level. But when you're starting a small business, I think it's one of the greatest misconceptions is people are like, oh, I want to be a business owner. I want to be a business owner. I can't wait to open a small business. I'm like, well, until you have employees and other people that can sell for you,
and a following,
you are the salesperson.
That's right.
So if you're telling me that you want to start a small business, you're pretty much telling me that you want to go into sales.
Right. That's exactly right.
And it is terrifying.
Yep.
And for our coaching clients, I think it's one of the number one things that they have a great idea. They, are putting together the back end, but it's the going out, getting clients, selling themselves or selling their product that becomes the cog in the wheel. And they just have to go through a lot of soul searching to figure out, okay, one, can I actually do this? And when I was recruiting for Hunter Row, so prior to selling real estate full time, I was doing all the recruiting. and coaching and training of our real estate agents. And I coached a lot of them to not get into real estate because people think, oh, they think it's HGTV. You know,
Yeah.
they're like, oh, I can open a door. I can show a house. I can, write a contract. And I'm
it's
like,
really complicated.
Oh, it is not that at all. It is all, you're selling yourself every time you have a listing appointment, every time you have a buyer orientation. The competition is super fierce and you have to be able to sell all the time.
Yep.
And if you're not able or comfortable to be able to do that, then it's not the right career path for you. And and that's what we work with a lot of our clients. And even before they start getting into business, I tell them, go talk to a coach, talk to somebody, and figure that out before you get into it. So that way you're not coming to me in debt, a year later, wondering what happened.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's exactly right. No, it's just something that you just have to realize. I know that, in the very, very beginning, I guess, I was so focused on being my very best when I got in front of people just because it was my reputation. And I didn't realize that by being my very best and by, giving it 1,000%, it was also selling me. And that's what people need to realize is that anytime you can be anywhere. And if, like you said, you met Carrie in the middle of a bar.
Right.
You're selling yourself constantly. And if you're doing the wrong thing, I almost said something.
If you're sloppy drunk,
or doing the wrong thing, then people are going to know that about you too. So you can sell yourself in a positive way. You can also sell yourself in a negative way.
100%.
And as a small business owner, you've got to remember that.
And all of the little things that we do really matter.
They do.
If I had been dressed like a slob or been loud and obnoxious or, any other thing that could be seen as unprofessional, that opportunity would have never come up.
Correct.
And I did it because I wanted to give back to the community, and I wasn't getting paid anything for showing up and speaking for her. And I did it a couple of times for her. But I wound up getting coaching clients and real estate clients just because they saw me in a professional capacity.
Exactly.
And that is what I think you have to remind people. Mike, on one of our past podcasts, we joked around about, what do you wear when you go to Walmart on a Sunday? And I'm like, well, I'm putting on my nice athletic attire because I want to be pulled together. Because I might run into a potential client or a current client
And I've run into like heads of corporations getting gas.
Yeah.
And I'm like, thank God I'm dressed appropriately.
Exactly.
Or dressed. Period. It's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. So put on your good boots, put on your good bra, and
that's right.
Get out there and do it. What would you say has been the greatest success that you've achieved?
Oh, wow. There have been so many. I'll give you a story, and it will be representative, I guess, of all of my best successes. So I did all of the training for the town of Cary for their staff for a long time until they moved it in-house because the staff got so big. And back when I was doing it, I did a lot of training on the Microsoft Office products. And I had a young fireman decide to come take my classes, and he sat in on a database class. It was a level 1 access class. And he was so psyched about it. The geek in him came out, right? He was so psyched about it. He said, Miss Holly, do you mind if I come back and sit in on it again? And I said, I don't care what, as long as it's good with your fire captain, I don't care what you do. And so he sat in on that class a couple times, and then he took the level 2, and then he took the level 3, and he kept repeat taking them. And pretty soon I was having to tell him, pipe down now, let other people have a chance to, But what I found out is, firemen have, in between fires, they have a lot of downtime. They're sitting around kind of waiting. They're stuck at the firehouse. A lot of them would be playing back then it was PlayStations, GameCubes, whatever, and waiting for a fire. And he said, not me. I went over and sat on that computer in the corner, and I just kept practicing what you showed us in class. And he finally got the idea to put together a system for the firehouse. And it was an inventory system that they didn't have. And I keep kind of imitating his voice. He is from Chatham County. He's got the coolest Southern accent ever.
Oh,
but he's like,
a good old boy.
Oh, good old boy, Miss Holly. All our equipment's made in some foreign country. We can't pronounce a one of them, And so he put together this inventory system that made it really, really super easy for them to look up and see what they had, what they didn't have, when they were going to run out, when they needed to reorder. And he did such a good job that his fire chief bragged to some of the other captains, in the area. And they said, well, we want a copy of that. So pretty soon, all of the different fire stations in Cary are using this system that Lee put together. Well, the IT department didn't like that because they were supposed to be, doing that particular function. And so they finally called him in. They said, you need it. And the fire chief said, no, he's going to continue to do this because he's doing so well. They actually shared that system throughout the state of North Carolina. And he started taking his time off from the fire department when he was at home, and he was employed as a database analyst by a very large company, which will remain unnamed. He retired from the town of Cary, I think it's been about 2 years ago now, and he had been hired by the IT department as a database analyst. So those stories.
My heart's like, yay!
And he's now doing it as a consultant. I mean, he's raking in the bucks, He's got 3 boys, so why not? But stories like that is probably one of my fun ones because I saw him off and on so many times over the years. But when people can tell me, oh, this changed my life, or even, this has saved me 5 hours a week, or, oh my gosh, now my team is communicating more effectively. That's what I consider my success as. I've helped somebody have a better life, an easier life, a happier life, a smarter life. That's my success.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, if people want to find you and they want you to come speak at their corporation or they want to pick your brain, where can they find you at?
So I have a website. Obviously, it's drhollyspeaks.com, and I'm drhollyspeaks@gmail.com. So both of those places will get you right to me.
Super easy. Mm-hmm. And if you want to find us, we are all over the interwebs. Come follow us on Twitter. We are on Instagram, we are on Facebook, and we are on LinkedIn. You can find Mike or I, or you can email us info@wiredtochange.com. And of course, we are trying to grow, and we love you, our listeners. So if you would share us and show the love for us as well, we would greatly appreciate it. So go ahead, like, share, and subscribe, and we will see you again on our Wired to Change podcast.